Hey everyone, this is the 23rd of January 2019, and I kind of wanted to make this quick video in a response to the Joe Rogan and Michael Shermer interview. A friend of mine sent me it, and I have not watched the entire thing. Michael Shermer is some famous skeptic, I guess. I didn't really know of him until he had been on Joe Rogan, and the first time I actually saw him was when Michael Shermer was on with Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson. And I guess they had brought Shermer on to try to provide some back and forth, debate on their theories, I guess. But I don't think he's like a very good skeptic. He kind of just points to he's kind of the counter argument, or at least he tries to, but he's not like an expert or anything, and only reads very limited surface material on the subject. Almost just seems to argue for argument's sake, and I don't know. It kind of just drives me crazy listening to some of the things that they were saying on this most recent Joe Rogan episode. So I have a clip pulled up here. I'm going to go to screen share. Now, I have the video pulled up here, and I'm just going to stop as we listen to it and talk about it, and I'll point to some other inconsistencies in what Shermer is saying and maybe some of the problems I have with his response to this, specifically who really killed JFK. So let's start here with this first bit.
The other aspect of conspiracy theories is cognitive dissonance. That is, we want the size of the event to be matched by a cause that's equally of that size.
Not really what that means, but
so the analogy I use is, the Holocaust, the worst genocide in human history, caused by the Nazis, the worst political regime in human history. There's a match there.
Right.
But if you say something like, JFK, the leader of the free world, brought down by who? Lee Harvey Oswald, just some nobody. There's this mismatch. Or
so he says, yeah, that Oswald is some nobody. Let's continue on before I go off, and I have a lot of links to show y'all.
9/11, this huge thing by 19 guys with box cutters.
Do you think that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone?
Yeah.
Do you really?
Sure, yeah,
what makes you think that?
All of the evidence.
All the evidence, right? I believe that Lee Harvey was a nobody, and all the evidence points to him doing everything.
And none of the evidence against anybody else, and all of the evidence against, particularly him. Joe Posner's book.
Okay.
Closed, and then
Bugliosi. Yeah, Bugliosi. So yeah, he's like, all right, well, I read Gerald Posner's book, this book here. Or no, I'm looking at Gerald Posner's Dr. Martin Luther King book, which he is blaming James Earl Ray. And 2 days ago was Martin Luther King Day. And if you want a real answer on that history, I would recommend James Earl Ray's lawyer and the King's family lawyer, Dr. William Pepper Potts' book on the subject. So anyway, so here's the Case Closed book by Gerald Posner. It's like some behemoth of a tome. Yeah, 640 pages. It's quite lengthy, and it's supposed to be, oh yeah, so great. And yet Gerald Posner, a guy who had to quit his job over plagiarism, right? So yeah, well, let's just go into some of the things that they're talking about here. Vincent Bugliosi is the other person that he's trying to think of, and it's this book here, another behemoth tomb book that makes you feel all fancy for reading it. So
he has a massive book where he lines up every single one of the arguments by the JFK conspiracy. For example, conspiracists make a big deal about how Oswald got a job at the book depository building, which just happened to be where the parade route was going, so he could have a clear shot. So it was Posner that tracked down when the White House determined, even when Kennedy was going to Dallas, let alone what the parade route would be, and Oswald already had the job there.
Yes, he did already have the job there, but he's not going to tell you who hooked him up with this job, this nobody. He got this job from this lady, a family friend named Ruth Payne, right? She was a friend of Marina's. They lived with her for a time while they were there in her deposition. So we have the testimony here of Ruth Payne, and you can go look up the Warren Commission if you really want. But Ruth Payne is the one that hooked him up with the job. She told him about the job at the Texas Book Depository. And she's also the one who called. And there's like some inconsistency with Ruth Payne's like testimony about, well, did someone tell her about this job? Because she's telling the commission that that someone told her, although they interviewed that lady, and that lady is like, well, I didn't tell her there was a job. I didn't even know there was an opening. Payne called the owner of I forget, I had his testimony up here somewhere, but she like basically asked him if, she can send her friend over there, Harvey Oswald, to get a job at the Texas Book Depository. Okay. So Ruth Payne admitted, in the event you advised him at the time that he was employed. Oh, wait, that's not the part. Oh, I'm trying to find out. Maybe it's in the other one. But let me just look up book instead. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, I'm doing this all wrong. Texas book. Oh, I guess it's not really mentioned as much in this one. But yeah, Ruth Payne is the one who got him that job, hooked him up with that job at the Texas Book Depository. Once again, why is this of really concern, right? Is it just a coincidence that he was working in this building prior to the assassination route, or the route of the caravan or whatever? Why does this matter? Why does it matter that this nobody apparently got this job hookup from a nobody? Or is Ruth Payne a nobody? If we look here, we have her husband, Michael Payne, right? Let's just go hopping through here. Okay. Michael Payne, engineer, didn't seem to be. Most notable thing is that he's, involved with assassination because he knew Lee Harvey Oswald. But let's just look at his family, okay? Born in New York, father Lyman Payne, architect, activist. His mother is Ruth Forbes Young. I wonder who that is. Ruth Forbes Young. Oh, a member of the Forbes family and a member of the International Peace Academy. Also co-founded Berkeley's Institute for the Study of Consciousness. Being this lady, who's Michael Payne's mom, is also the daughter of Ralph Emerson Forbes and Elise Cabot. She's the great-granddaughter. So Michael Payne, this nobody guy that is also hanging out apparently with this other nobody guy, Lee Harvey Oswald, the great-granddaughter of Ralph Waldo Emerson, and a niece of William Cameron Forbes. Like, are you kidding? Like, is this like for real? But yeah, some nobody's hanging out with some of the most powerful elite people that we know about. And it actually comes to find out that also, when you can go look this up for yourself, don't take my word for any of this information. I don't certainly take Shermer or Bugliosi's or Posner's word either. But Ruth Payne's sister and brother-in-law also worked for the Central Intelligence Agency, right? So you're starting to see some like weird misinformation where he says he's a nobody. Oh, look, just a coincidence that he has this job, and yet you don't know about all these other like little inklings of strange fingerprints being left around everywhere, right? He also got into contact. Really, I've also got into contact with the Payne family from this man here, George de Moldenschau, right Russian, Jewish Russian immigrant involved with all sorts of. He was a petroleum engineer guy who had his, working in very lucrative oil industries and stuff like that, and has been shown that he was a CIA asset as well. Look, it even says here on his, Wikipedia page that his brother was one of the an OSS member, worked with the Radio Free Europe, big propaganda operation in Europe, obviously, and just happens to know, super rich, guy, who has CIA connections, just happens to know. He was actually called to testify during the House Select Committee on Assassinations and during the Warren Commission. He always kind of seemed like he felt bad about his involvement because I think he actually liked Oswald a little bit. But when he was called to testify, here's at the end, when he was called to testify before the commission, the House Select Committee on Assassinations, he was found dead like the next afternoon from a self-inflicted shotgun wound. Okay, so just after he's called to testify, all of a sudden he blows his brains out. Okay, kind of strange. And if we're gonna also take Shermer's word that he believes that all of the evidence points to Oswald acting alone, let's just go to the just in case you don't know, there is the House Committee on Select House Committee on Assassinations during the 70s. Here we go. We're on the official archives.gov website. And here we go. So yeah, they're saying that he fired 3 shots or yada yada. We should just let Shermer talk his head off before we go and debunk him even further.
That's just chance.
Just chance, right?
Advance, bro.
That's right.
Do you think it's possible that Oswald was in cahoots?
Does he cahoots with who? I wonder.
No. Why do you think that? What about the magic bullet theory?
Okay, before we even get into the magic bullet theory, because Joe Rogan doesn't even let him finish the cahoots story or whatever, right? Was there a conspiracy? Now I'm already telling you that somehow Oswald knows these influential people that have interesting connections, not only to the, obviously the Central Intelligence Agency, which has often had their fingers being pointed at for this operation. And it's not just the Central Intelligence Agency that got JFK, but it's a string of people and organizations and groups that, were already butting heads with JFK. And this nobody apparently is just the plausible deniability in this whole scenario. But so yeah, let's just go to the findings here. So here, even in their own words, find the government, where they admitted in Part C right here, the committee believes on the basis of the evidence available to it that President John F. Kennedy was probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy. The committee is unable to identify the other gunmen or the extent of the conspiracy. Oh, there probably was people, but we don't know who it was. They say nope, not the Soviets, nope, not the Cuban government, and not the Secret Service or the FBI, the CIA were not involved. The whole group per se. And this is good here. I mean, they say this here hey, the Soviet government not involved, the Cuban government not involved. I like this one, though. The committee believes on the basis of evidence available to it that the anti-Castro Cuban groups, such as people involved with the false flags off of Miami and the Bay of Pigs people, were not involved in the assassination of President Kennedy, but that the available evidence does not preclude the possibility that individual members may have been involved. So here they say, oh, we don't know the gunman or the extent of this conspiracy, but we may have some ideas, but we're just going to leave it at that. And here it just says that, we were doing the best we could, performing with varying degrees of competency to fill its duties. And here, even in the Dr. Luther King. So even if I hate that he references books by people. So yeah, he's talking about Gerald Posner, who has this book, Case Closed, about Oswald did it, yada, yada. And he also has another book about MLK and that James Earl Ray did it. And I really highly recommend, we're just 2 days out from the event, go look up The Plot to Kill King by William Pepper. Once again, the family attorney who proved in 93 and 99 not only James Earl Ray's innocence in this assassination, but here we go, The Plot to Kill King. Okay. Not only did he prove that it wasn't him, but they also got blamed for government agencies involved, like the Memphis police and certain members of the FBI, stuff like that. I'll have to leave a comment if you want more information on this. I mean, you can just go read it for yourself or go look up some of the interviews with Dr. William Pepper. Great book, heartbreaking also as well. But I hate that, yeah, he's referencing an author that is going against and just trying to just cover the government's, even though the government has already admitted, here it is, they admitted that stuff is going on. They just he just is choosing not to look at this or whatever, just choosing to read the journalist, the so-called journalist, the plagiarist journalist who is promoting the government's official story on this rather than the stuff that you don't hear about. Let's see if what they had here. They're also saying like, oh, this Raul thing is not worthy. Here we go, but here we go. Part B for the Martin Luther King on this Select Committee assassinations findings. Part B, the committee believes on the basis of circumstantial evidence available to it that there is a likelihood that James Earl Ray assassinated Dr. Martin Luther King as a result of a conspiracy. I don't know what more they really need. We can go into the evidence all day. Like we can talk about who is where and who is why and blah blah blah. But like here is the government in their own words admitting to this stuff. Like what like we could go, yes, for certain into the details, the nitty gritty of like who was where and who was why. We can certainly do that, and I will certainly do that. But you just gotta like look at their own. This is from their own mouth that they did not like do the best job. That they do believe there is a conspiracy involved. Here they also talk about, oh, because there's all the stories about the FBI harassing Martin Luther King, threatening to like telling he should kill himself before they tell his wife that he's being and faithful and stuff like that as well. They even contemplated putting like LSD and stuff on his steering wheel so he would have a attack and have an accident or something like that. And they're even saying here that maybe their counterintelligence program against Dr. King grossly abused and exceeded its legal authority, and maybe also kind of encouraged parts of the conspiracy itself. So it's just really disingenuous how he can like point out these books by disgraced authors and authors of that promote bold-faced lies or misinformation, right? Oh, Oswald, some nobody. Yeah, some nobody who worked at the Atsugi Naval Air Base working on the U-2 spy planes. That was a big deal back in this time. This is super classified information. U-2 spy planes are taken for granted now, but they were top of the line technology at the time. And Oswald was a Marine working on radar at this base before he decides he wants to like learn Russian apparently, and then makes a big show about denouncing his U.S. citizenship. And even apparently, and I was reading here on archive.gov, they have his like whole life story here. And yeah, he's somehow like traveling to some pretty nice hotels along the way, even though he's supposed to be like dirt poor nobody. Before he denounces his citizenship. When he gets there, he says just think about how a Marine with classified info who's working on radar in Japan, fairly close to Russia, and is claiming that he's able to, or I think he even said when he was in Russia that he would tell him some secrets about when he was working at the Marines, tell the Soviets, that is. And somehow this man who is in Soviet Russia for a couple of years marries a Russian woman, makes a whole big deal about denouncing his U.S. Citizenship, and somehow also gets back to the United States during the height of the Cold War with all this baggage on him, and they just let him walk in. No problem. He's just in. And then he's hanging out with Ruth Payne, Ruth Michael Payne, related to the Forbes family, Georgia Morgenschalt, a, millionaire CIA asset, petroleum engineer, oil man. Yep, just some nobody. Just some nobody. And not to mention like all of his other weird stuff about whatever he was doing in Oswald was doing in New Orleans at the time. So I think they're going to talk about the magic bullet theory here.
Well, that's been settled by the fact that,
and I can't even tell you how much mental gymnastics that these people have to do for the magic bullet theory.
The way it showed in the videos is that the two seats are like this, and that the bullet has to do this. Well, in fact, the seats were like that.
Did he even move his hands?
And that Connolly was.
Well, you're explaining this in audio form. Just when you're saying so it's like stadium seating.
Right.
One's elevated above the other one.
That's right. Yeah. So the bullet actually does, when it passes through the neck, through Kennedy's neck, and then hits Connolly's shoulder, it is already moving down.
I think it hit his wrist, it fractured his wrist.
Right. This has been tested and tested and tested.
Well, sort of. Here's my issue with it. There's a couple issues. One,
Joe Rogan always brings up magic bullet theory, but he was like, "Oh, do you think he was in cahoots?" And then he didn't really expand on it because they choose not to, or they just don't know who to point fingers at.
On the pro side, the idea that bullets will take a straight path is ridiculous. I've talked to hunters that have shot animals in the front and had a bullet come out the same side they shot it. It ricocheted off bones and came out like the front of the animal. Like bullets take weird paths
Yeah.
when they hit things in particular. So do arrows. As a person who's well versed in firearms and shot animals and hunted, sometimes a bullet goes straight through, and sometimes it hits bones and wacky things happen. Things deflect. But on the negative side, they always distort. Bullets always distort, particularly when they hit bone. What bothered me was that they found that bullet in Connolly's gurney when they brought him to the hospital.
Yeah, so they found, and you can go look up what he's talking about, and that this one bullet like pierced JFK's head, his neck, and also Governor Connolly's like wrist or whatever. And they found the bullet somehow like on the gurney next to at the hospital next to Governor Connolly. If they have a picture of it, yeah, right here it is, perfectly fine. Somehow it did this, dink, 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 dink. Even though you can tell JFK has been like shot beforehand. Yeah. So yeah, here's a magic bullet. I don't know. Ooh, and once again, we could go to the ballistics and all day and the nitty gritty of the physics or whatever, you know. But like we don't really need to. We certainly could, but I certainly don't think we need to, because there's all this other, you know, auxiliary or information on the peripheral that are feeding into, like, you know, there's more than what is being said.
This is the bullet. It matches.
Yeah, talking about the bullet.
But wait a minute, why is it
And a handgun, and he went over to the house. He took a shot.
Oh, this is very important. My bad.
Himself had attempted to assassinate a general named Walker.
So yeah, so supposedly a couple, like, I should go look this up, but I think it's like a couple of months beforehand, this crazy right-wing general guy named General Edwin Walker, who had just recently like left his post. This general who also coincidentally had like major beef with JFK and RFK. He was trying to like instigate some stuff in the military. They like throw him in an insane asylum for like a little while. So this General Edwin Walker like was not a fan of JFK, but there's this like weird event that happens to him, and he's called in for the war, and they have all this other inconsistencies. But someone like takes a shot like through his house or something, General Edwin Walker, and then no one's able to find out like who it is. It's not until the Warren Commission that the Warren Commission thus blames this assassination attempt on Oswald. Some people are like, oh, maybe it was Oswald, like wasn't at his house that day. He had left like a strange note to his wife saying he may not be back, what to do if like he didn't come back. So it's a very strange thing. But there is no clear evidence. There's no clear, you know, definitive thing that says Oswald did it. Now there's some strange stories about and other people that were not interviewed around General Edward Walker, that people live next to him, saying that other weird things were happening during that week. Strange cars around, men running around the houses, looking into the windows. And I believe that the way that Edwin Walker even gets like Oswald named as like a potential suspect in this case that has no suspects until after the JFK assassination, which is, you know, months afterwards. Edwin Walker like befriended a guy who was shot trying to chase after the J.D. Tippit murder. J.D. Tippit was also the guy that they point Oswald at for shooting, right? They say they don't even get Oswald for JFK. They actually say they get him for the J.D. Tippit murder. This other police officer was murdered in the area on the same day. Some guys, another civilian, chased after a car that was apparently associated with murdering J.D. Tippit. That civilian was shot. Eventually, Edwin Walker visits this civilian. I don't remember his name, but eventually like befriends him and convinces that it must have been Oswald that shot at the general through the window. So it's a very weird story about how they even blame Oswald. There is no evidence. They have no way of proving that. They had no suspects. It's not until like months later after the assassination of the president that, oh, maybe it was him that did it. And here he is still saying like, oh, it must have been him. Not saying that Oswald doesn't have like sketchy mental episodes throughout his life or whatever, but to point at these particular examples is misinformation. It is disinformation.
6 months before, with
6
a
months.
rifle and a handgun, and he went over to the house. He took a shot through the
How do you know? Were you there? Do you have a YouTube video of this?
guys when he saw him at the desk, took a shot, missed him.
He's like interjecting himself when Oswald has never admitted to any of this. There is no evidence that points him there. There's only some like timelines and things that we can go off of, but they clearly like, oh, that's who it was. It doesn't make any sense either that Oswald wants to shoot Edwin Walker, a super crazy conservative, and it also wants to kill JFK, who's also viewed as a super liberal. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Told his wife about it. I'm a revolutionary. I'm trying to start something here.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Oswald was innocent. I'm not. I mean, and I think it's very possible that Oswald did shoot at the president. He might have even hit the president. It's also very possible that some other people were involved as well.
Who?
I don't know.
See, this is the problem.
But wait a minute. Why is it a problem? If you don't know who they are, just because you don't know who they are doesn't mean they didn't exist.
Okay, but why do we need to postulate extra people?
Because of all.
Because there's other people that you just choose not to look at. You only look at one thing or look at the thing that they told you, and that's it. Very interesting.
The gunshots that happened in a short amount of time. The reason why they came up with the theory of the magic bullet in the first place, because they had to account for a bullet that hit a curb underneath the overpass. You know that, right?
Yeah. Okay. There's.
Do you know why they came up with them? Yeah, I've been there. Do you know why they came up with?
But it's short. I mean, it's right there. You can.
That's not the point. The point. Well, it's not. That's sort of true. Yeah, it's not a far shot.
And he was a pretty good marksman.
Some say he's a pretty good marksman. Other people in Russia that he went hunting with say that he couldn't hit anything, and also wasn't even a fan of trying to actually hit and hunt anything. Just, little tidbits, just to kind of counter narrative of what they're trying to say. Oh yeah, he's such a good shot, really good shot, or even though he says he wasn't actually that great. But
we're not talking about that. We're talking about the reason why they came up with the magic bullet theory in the first place. Do you know why?
Well, I thought it was because of the alignment of the seats.
No, because they had to attribute 3 shots. They had to figure out, one of them, they were thinking, well, all these wounds came from 3 bullets. But then they found a bullet that had hit the curb on the underside. The guy checked into a hospital because he was hit with a ricochet. So there's a curb that they proved was hit with a bullet.
Ballistics.
Him? Like, why? He's never shot anybody before. Do it publicly.
Posner talks about Ruby's character and who he was. Major Kennedy supporter, running with some bad dudes, some bad hombres there.
Actually, my grandfather, and this is just an anecdote, because he says right there that he was a big Kennedy supporter. Because actually, my grandfather lived in Dallas and worked at the Macy's or J.C. Penney's or something like that for a while in Dallas. And he said that actually one time this guy came in, and he was looking super nice, and said, started to schmum talking and was saying like, hey, you're kind of a nice young man. How about you come work for me every once in a while? Yada yada, kind of stuff like that. And when that man left, my grandfather talked to a lady that was there and asked who that was and if he should go. That lady was like, no, you should not involve yourself with that man. And it was Jack Ruby, apparently. And my grandfather always thought it was kind of strange that he actually was smack talking Kennedy. Jack Ruby was, and he thought it was strange that, that he wanted to avenge the wife of Jackie's killer by killing Oswald, which is just there's once again, just a little anecdote. But he's going to go, well, he's going to reference Posner, the plagiarized journalist. Great job.
He was a gun owner. Security wasn't anything like. He could just walk right in.
Right.
Like he did.
It's possible, but it's also possible that guy owed something to the mob, and this is what they told him to do. You're going to get rid of that guy. No one's going to care. They're going to be happy. Fuck that guy. He just shot the president. Who knows? It seems so. It seems.
And that despite all the. They have no stenographs of when they interviewed Oswald because apparently they couldn't fit it in the room because it was too small. How can you not take notes from the killer on the biggest murder in American history other than I guess Abraham Lincoln or whatever? But the president was literally just shot. How can you not take notes on this? Another strange inconsistency with, if you want some more information, maybe on Jack Ruby's time in jail, there's a book called The Reporter That Knew Too Much about Dorothy Kilgallen, famous journalist, woman journalist. And she was actually, if not the last person for sure to interview Jack Ruby. And then she dies, from pill overdoses, on the heels of releasing some major JFK information as well. Just other little anecdotes, other little things and pieces in this giant tapestry.
It's people want it to be one way or the other, and they want this case closed.
It doesn't have to be that way. I mean, Lincoln was assassinated by conspiracy. Evident pretty quickly afterwards,
right? And
they rounded him up. World War I was launched by a conspiracy with the assassination of Franz Ferdinand by a Serbian group of Black Hand.
Well, we already talked about the Vietnam War too, the Gulf of Tonkin incident. That's a false flag.
So these things do happen. There are false flags. There are conspiracies to assassinate foreign leaders.
He just thinks he's read the best book. I don't care if you've read 50 books on this subject like Dan Carlin does. You must have read 50 wrong books on the subject. And you have to think about who writes these books and what kind of like angle are they trying to like, you know, promote themselves? Because all these books that Posner and Bugliosi wrote, they don't use any updated information. They're not going to doing the real research. They're just rehashing the Warren Commission. And we could go into the Warren Commission itself, like for a while, as part of this conspiracy itself. Several people on the Warren Commission end up being influential, like Gerald Ford goes on to be president. Alan Dulles, the CIA director that was fired by JFK for botching the Bay of Pigs. Alan Dulles also involved with all sorts of crazy, sketchy stuff in American history, like the MK Ultra projects and overthrowing governments and causing sorts of instability all over the world. To install banana republics, you know, that kind of term kind of comes from the Arbenz and Guatemalan situation. But the Warren Commission is just, you know, the body of work. And even though this is what the whole House Select Committee on Assassinations was basically doing, is saying like, oh well, you know, Warren Commission, the Warren Commission presented the conclusion in its report in a fashion that was too definitive, whatever that means. Even though the Warren Commission apparently arrived at its conclusions based on its available to it in good faith, so they did the best that they could, so they say. Yeah, and I can't tell you how much beef is between JFK and Alan Dulles, or even the Dulles family. Once again, the Dulles family. Also, Alan Dulles, second director of the CIA, infamous OSS officer. Even his mistress, Mary Bancroft, was, I wonder if they'll even have it on her. But Mary Bancroft was a spy, essentially, sort of. Alan Dulles. Oh, look, even when you look it up here, because she was a family friend of Ruth Paine, even when they kind of get here. I'm not sure if they'll mention it in her Wikipedia article, but she was a mistress with Alan Dulles. Let's see if I don't remember if it says her name. Oh yeah, after the war, good friends with Henry Luce, other good family friend of Alan Dulles as well. I think Clara, what's her name? Clara Booth Luce. I know Alan Dulles and Henry Luce's wife kind of used to shack up, I think, every now and then as well. So yeah, here's just a lot of strange connections and things and direct misinformation. Oh, here we go. After divorcing her husband, we're talking about Mary Bancroft, she went on a trip to Europe in '93. She was also hanging out with Ruth Paine. Isn't that cool? Right? So here we go. Oh yeah, and she was also a client of Carl Jung. So was Dulles, I think, too. No, it wasn't Dulles. It was Dulles' wife that was Carl Jung's client as well. So here's all these people. Here's all these connections. I haven't even bothered talking about Magic Bullet because of how freaking dumb it sounds. But he'll believe it because Joe Posner said it.
Hitch wrote this book on Kissinger as a war criminal. That all the shenanigans we were doing in South America with dictators there, we're backing this dictator because he's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch versus this guy, and we're gonna.
That's clearly like a twist on a famous Alan Dulles quote where he's, I think someone's mentioning about him hiring Nazi intelligence officers after the war, and he's like, well, at least there are Nazis,
Assassinate Castro, all that stuff that came out that Johnson tried to cover up, that came out in the Pentagon paper about Kennedy plotting to have Castro assassinated.
Okay, yes, it was true because the CIA kept telling him to. Even at the same time, Kennedy was also, because it would have been disastrous if someone could point out like, hey, he's talking to the Castros or to Castro, and he's not being a hardliner, and he's just like giving into communism, even though people in his own administration would have roasted him for it had it been known that he was secretly talking with Khrushchev and Castro and trying to work out like a real diplomacy between all these people.
That's a kind of conspiracy. Yeah, absolutely. The question is, did it happen in that particular case, this one or here? And the evidence, in my opinion, after reading particularly Gerald Posner's book,
The Plagiarized Journalist. Congratulations.
Case closed. Funny internet meme last week. Guy that dies goes to heaven. God says, "You've been such a good fellow your whole life. I'll grant you one which you can ask me anything." All right, okay. God says, "It was Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone using his own car." This goes higher up.
That's funny. Did you ever read David Lifton's novel or book
So I'm only halfway through. If y'all want to see me, because I could probably just rant on this subject all day. Hopefully, I've left you some breadcrumbs for you to follow up on and make your own informed decision on this matter as well. And don't just, go to the Joe Rogan and just assume what Michael Shermer said because he read 2 books by 2 people that I personally don't really trust. Yeah, do your own research, come to your own conclusions, and I will see you all later. It was really fun doing this video. Once again, hit that like. Drop a couple of comments if you have some more information you'd like me to research, or if there's more on this video you'd like me to research as well. So I hope y'all have a good rest of the day, and I hope to see y'all again soon. Goodbye.